viewpoints, and perhaps even some abstract viewpoints like structure and intention. All of the variables that, if properly modeled, could then be pieced together to make a cohesive composition. So that idea can be expressed using this HPPL framework. This model shown here, a distribution over musical compositions be factored as a product of distributions over potentially interdependent viewpoints. We call this universal distribution over compositions. And there's some important observations that fall out of modeling it this way. First, as per Bayes' law, the order of dependencies is lucid theory irrelevant. So, for example, a system that has two viewpoints, VC1, VC2, say, for example, harmony and a melody. In theory, the same compositions can be sampled whether harmony is dependent on melody, as shown on the left, for example, let's say, or vice versa. And in practice, the independence assumptions and approximations, the way that we model these concepts does affect the joint that results from the factor. So the point here is that there's not one inherently correct factor. The second observation is that you can marginalize out viewpoints to achieve simpler models. So in other words, you can reuse a system designed for one task in another task with a smaller set of viewpoints simply by marginalizing unused viewpoints. So for example, here are two systems. On the left, is a system for jazz lead sheet with viewpoints as defined by Pache and Roy. And the one on the right is a system for pop lead sheet with viewpoints as defined in the system that we built. And you can note that simply by marginalizing over the lyrics viewpoint, our system could generate compositions that would fit in the domain of jazz lead sheet compositions. Now, before you run me out of town on a rail, keep in mind that a lot hinges on how these models are implemented and trained. But if they're implemented so that the stylistic nuances between jazz and pop are explicitly modeled as variables to learn, then our lead sheet system might even generate good jazz lead sheets when training on jazz music. The third observation about this universal distribution over compositions is that even if other systems don't consider a strict subset of viewpoints, factors which represent modules can be reduced. So here we have a third system based on Computational's definition of a system for generating block corrals. Note that neither of our previous systems is a strict subset of viewpoints, but there are some factors that overlap. So in essence, this HPPL model of universal distribution over compositions allows us to go from thinking about systems, about unit systems in this fashion, to thinking about systems like this, allowing us to focus on individual modules, compare different implementations of these modules, and reuse existing modules. So our research interest is in designing a model for lyrical sectional form lead sheets, or put simply, pop lead sheets. We identified a few high-level viewpoints that we felt were particularly important in the system that we had in mind, including inspiring source, intention, structure, harmony, melody, and lyrics. And so this is how we started thinking about it. But we quickly realized that there was a lot more that should be considered, a lot more detail that was needed. And so using this HPPL framework and graphical modeling, we're able to quickly and easily explore and discuss many more viewpoints and debate ways to further define each of these high-level viewpoints and what dependencies should be between viewpoints and which are significant. So each circle here represents essentially a viewpoint. An arrow from A to B means that B is a position on A. And in this graphical model, you can see different levels of modularization of a pop lead sheet composition. Each higher level concept is factored as a product of lower level concept models. The graph for a block corral might look very different, particularly at a higher level, but will likely reuse many of these lower level concepts, highlighting places to focus, compare, and reuse. You should be asking, did we get all the circles right? Did we get all the dependencies? Are they reasonable? Perhaps, perhaps not, but the important thing is that we have a framework now with which we can argue about that, not just among us music researchers, but also with artists and musicians. And that's cool. So, for example, here's the subgraph representing the interdependence of harmony and melody that we mentioned earlier. Or another common question posed in graph is, what comes first, the lyrics or the music? And it turns out that those are equally interesting questions to debate from a computational standpoint. So for the purposes of prototyping a model designed using this HPL framework, we settled on this model of population composition with factors of distribution over populations given an inspiring source as a product of distribution over intentions given an inspiring source, structure given an intention, harmony given intention and structure, melody given intention, structure, harmony, and lyrics given intention, structure, harmony. And like the MIT group, we derived empirical distributions representing each of these sub-concept models and example of population. And this leads you to actually named Hello World, given that it's the first from what we hope to be many. And we invited an artist, Asher Bay, to arrange and perform and record Hello World. And we'll just play a portion of the song now, and then I invite you to come to the new concert tonight. I will perform my own arrangement of this piece with a 4-piece combo. And now to your listening pleasure. I would really tell you this. What do you think if you and I agree? People they will show you. You just yeah, don't doubt my So, and that's Hello World. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions. Where's the score? Where's the lead sheet? Oh, online maybe? So we're still working on a website. I have a website, but we're changing the domain. So, but it's in my paper. Popstar, yes, yeah, I kind of glossed over that a little bit. Inspiring source, we mean what motivated the writing of the song. So yeah, you're talking about in terms of training on existing music, how I know what the inspiring source for a song was. Yeah, so one aspect of this model is that we don't necessarily have to use empirical distributions to model each of the concepts. So the model that I would plan to use for inspiring source would probably not be empirically derived. Think of other creative ways of creating a distribution of deriving intention from an inspiring source. Did that answer your question? No.
Use case.
Well, like for example,
And you know what my inspiring source is.
I don't. Right, so I wouldn't train my model of inspiration on what other people use as their inspiring source for their music. I would create a model. So the idea that I've got that I won't get to in the near future is to create kind of like a persona that interacts with its environment, social media, news, stocks, that kind of thing, and derives inspiration from those external factors the way a human composer would. And presumably, that would fuel certain emotions and themes and things that would inspire the song. Yeah.
Was this song curated, and if so, what was the process?
Yes. So arranging and performing are not elements of the system. It's strictly the composition, strictly that comes up with the chord, the lead sheet, the chords of the melody, the lyrics. So at that point, we turn it over to a musician and say,
I mean, was this like the first thing out of the box, or was it selected from?
"Oh, this song?"
Yeah.
We didn't handpick. I mean, we just picked one of the samples that
Just
came out.
one.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand the order and relationship between the lyrics and melody generation.
So am I.
Like which order do you do it in, and do they kind of, is the one that goes second the benefit of warning from the one that's already kind of?
Yes. And this is a work in progress, but thought a lot about what is that relation between melody and lyrics and stress. Because on the one hand, you might say, well, melody is consistent across verses, regardless of lyrics. So melody should be independent of lyrics. But then you say, well, but the exact rhythms and even to some extent pitches and prosody are influenced by what's in the lyrics. So there's actually a much more complex relationship there. And the way we're starting to think about it is you have a generic melody that represents the melody across verses, but then, and that's independent perhaps of the exact lyrics in the verses. But then the exact verse version or verse instance of that melody is influenced by the lyrics. Does that make sense? So we're actually splitting that viewpoint, that melody viewpoint, into two different concepts now, which is something that kind of fell out of doing this process. So that's, yeah. Question.
So are time signature and tempo the only rhythmic parameters that are represented?
Well, no. So I guess I'm trying to understand exactly your question. Those are kind of like the most fundamental concepts on which our notion, our viewpoints that deal with rhythm and things. So like harmony duration and melodic duration up there, those kind of represent more the idea of a model of rhythm that, of course, require understanding time signature and tempo.
Sure, there could be other kinds of components, structural components of rhythm in terms of groupings, accents and phrasings, things that you're making assumptions about. According to the Western tradition about notation, about what a composer does, about meter and key signature at all, right?
Right. Yes.
Specific to all the sex in the world.
Right.
So it's generalizable to some extent, but
right.
it is within a particular tradition. So it's a choice.
Yeah.
A quick question. How do you see this being? I mean, you mentioned something about you've got a kind of good representation for that works with working musicians who don't have a technical background. Do you see this as being a way to create interesting user interfaces that work for musicians, or do you have any vision for how that works?
I haven't thought a ton about that. But I think it absolutely could be. Yeah.
It's quite. I don't know. Provokes a lot of thought about how you might design a real end user experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because when you talk to a musician, this is what I love about this research is you ask them what comes first, the lyrics or the music, and either they don't know or they'll offer some kind of offhand response. But when you probe a little deeper, it's not usually as simple as all of that. So it does help to be able to kind of talk more precisely and specifically about the composition process.
Okay, we don't have any more questions?
I'm just curious about how long it takes. Like, you've got a lot of models here, you've got to model every one of those parameters, so just some idea of whether that takes 1 minute or 10 days.
Well, yeah, great question. That's right. Well, obviously it depends how much training data. And I'm not going to tell you how much training data I used to on, but it ran really fast. I mean, on the order of seconds. Yeah. But I imagine that would scale up pretty fast as we got more training.
So we'll find the time.
And so that's for learning, and for generation is probably even faster than real time and faster than needed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't been like serializing models or anything, so I'm learning every time. So yeah, that's including learning and generating all. Yeah, you're right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Elizabeth. This is complete learning.
Good morning. Thank you all for your attention. This is my third Zoom, and I'm very pleased to be back and see this community growing. I'm coming from Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, where I am an assistant professor in the departments of music and arts technology and computer graphics technology. And I am going to be talking here about my exploration using a variation of a restricted Boltzmann machine as a generative tool to create music. So this is a deep learning model. And what I wanted to do with this is feed it material and then explore the realm of musical possibilities that could come out of it. So what's the most complex thing it can produce? What is the thing that is most similar to the training corpus? What are the interesting mistakes that it makes along the way? When I started playing with it, I found that all the various configuration possibilities, so the dimensions of the network, the various encodings that I feed to it had dramatic effects on what it produced. So I tried lots and lots of them and compared them, which is what I will show you here. So first I'll talk a little bit about what the model is, what I fed it, how I compared it to the results, and then I'm going to play you some examples and look at those, talk about them in a sort of musical analysis way, and then we should have some time for questions. Okay, so the distributed Boltzmann machine has been around for a little while. Starting in the mid-2000s, researchers found a way to train them very effectively, and so they've been taking off in the machine learning world generally. And what we like about them is that they have representation learning abilities, so they can access raw pixel data to do computer vision processing. So that attracted me to them. So the conditional restricted Boltzmann machine proposed by Graham Taylor and was used by him in several different proofs, primarily in modeling human motion data, so he's trained on mocap data. So the conditional version of this is you start with the classic restricted Boltzmann machine, which is, you can see in the upper left there. The classic version has two layers, a hidden layer and a visible layer, and they are connected, fully connected between the layers. And then the conditional aspect is that you feed it previous time steps. So that down the bottom are this stack of all the V's from the past, and you have directed connections forward to the visible and hidden layers. The depth of that stack is considered the order of the conditional RVM. So you can specify that. So you feed it the 3 previous time steps, or feed it 20 it doesn't have access to all of them. So this is from Taylor's work, training it on people, emotions, walking and running, and then having it generate motion afterwards, and finding that it works quite well, and then it transitions between walking and running quite smoothly, and then he trained out a whole bunch of other moves. And refer you to his work and to many of his publications if you want to see more into the technical details of the CRBM. So I wanted to get melodic data. There are many people who have been working on the polyphonic modeling using the box chorales and things like that. In this case, since the sort of proof of it is in motion data, I was attracted to the idea of looking at melodies as a sort of form of musical motion, and in particular, melodic patterns that imply all the harmonies, but they don't sound simultaneously. So Bach was a great a master of sounding the harmonies through chords or emphasized tones throughout arpeggios and all that sort of stuff. So I fed it all of the Bach solo cello pieces. There are 6 suites, 36 movements. There's around 30,000 notes within that. It's also literature that is very well analyzed by musicologists. So you can I can look at the results of my work and refer to that work and have some sense of is my music meaningful in that world. In order to understand what my stuff was, what the system was spitting out, I decided to take some complexity measures of Bach and then complexity measures of what I generated, and see not only the distributions of Bach, but the distributions of what the system generated, and see if we were in the same ballpark, just in terms of statistics. So I've used 3 different measures that were easily accessible to me and also are used quite extensively in literature. So we have non-pulsive string complexity. So I use the compression implementation of it, which is reflective of that. Then just straight up zipping using the zip algorithm. And then taking Shannon's entropy measure. I decided to use 1,000 node sequences because if you use very short ones, you have problems in estimating any of these things. And I didn't want my system to have to generate anything much longer than that. 1,000 nodes is a good healthy length, and many box movements are up to that. So you can see the LZW and the zip are relatively normal distributions. Shannon's entropy, however, is not normal. It's maybe many subpopulations normal. So then this one here, so these are taking all of the 1,000 node sequences out of the Bach training suite and plotting the Shannon's entropy value for those over the LZW compression, and you can see that Bach forms these clusters. And then with these little string walks between them, which are a result of me concatenating all of the Bach movements together. Which, when you hear them in concert, makes sense. You hear movement after movement, so I assume that there's some reason Bach recorded in that. I don't have a problem with that. So this huge cluster down here, and then there's little circles, clusters up higher, which I assume are individual movements, although I haven't dissected that. I don't know which those little clusters are. So this is Bach. This is the training material. This is the comparison of all the different representations that I've fed to the CRBM. And for each one, I have generated 1,000 node sequences, and then take the statistics of that bunch, and then track them all here. So you can see at the top and the bottom are sort of the limits. If you just feed all the ones, you get 0 entropy. If you feed random numbers, you get at the bottom, and then there's Bach and all these things. So if you want to dissect this, this is in the paper, I would encourage you to do so. I find that there's a few in here that are close. I've got some of the black ones are the closest ones. And I'm going to explain what all of the encodings are in a second. However, I find that none of them match. None of them are perfect matches. And these are the distributions of, this is all Shannon's entropy over at LZW. You can see that some of them are tight clusters, normal, and then some of them have strange tails. The most bizarre one, of course, being the bottom right. You're doing this FFT where there's a huge bunch, but then there's a whole bunch of failures. And takeaway being that none of these exhibit that the sort of heterogeneous graph that we saw from the actual Bach, which had little clusters sort of in different places around that. None of them were able to do that. Okay, so what did I feed this network? So the RVM has been shown to be very good at learning representations from raw data. So I wanted to give it access to as much as a sort of essential aspect of music as possible to strip out all of the human assumptions that we put into our typical encodings. So maybe we know it's very keyboard centric, it's equal tempered, all that sort of stuff, 12 tone. However, I couldn't, in practicality, I couldn't get that far away from it. But so these are the ones that I tried. So in the middle we see the piano roll. So I fed it a binary vector where which represents the whole keyboard, and then whichever note is currently being played, that one is a 1. So the so-called 1 hot vector. I tried feeding in pitch classes, so you only have 12. Again, using the 1 hot, feeding in interval tokens. So it's taking the interval between each pair of notes and then still using a binary vector to represent all those. I fed it just raw, just the MIDI pitch of all the notes. So it's just a single feature of that. Then, again, inspired by the notion that it learns motion really well, consider the MIDI pitches to be motion, and then fed it all of the derivatives of that, so the current velocity, pitch velocity, acceleration, et cetera. And then I took an FFT of some number of notes, of a windowed sequence of notes, and fed it that to see what it would do. And here's some of the things that it does. So I'm going to play some of these for you. Using a tried and true technology. Okay, so I did not bring a cello, so these are all going to be button octave. So as you know, I'm sure everybody has heard the training corpus starter. So that's what we're looking for here. Okay, so if I just needed MIDI pitch along. So all of these examples are generated with 100 units in the hidden invisible layers, which is what Taylor used in some of his work. So I went with that, and with an order of 3. So it's looking at 3 basic times. Not sounding like Bob, but it is interesting. This next one, I'm only going to play the first line. We hear the figuration, right? By adding all these derivatives of pitch, we manage to capture the figuration of the opening with Bob. But it is drifting up and down and does not have any sense of implied harmony, at least not in the way that we would hope to find it. All right, if we feed it a piano roll, I'll play this first one here. So this is the classic 1 hot form. a chord change. It starts out on A major, and then goes to a D, and then starts cycling around something on this repetitive sort of E major configuration. I'm going to skip over the pitch class one. If we feed it interval tokens, so this is trained on the difference between each pair of notes, and does not have any of the piano roll or pitch class information. We get this. Goes very short on time, but we can talk more about it. So this one, here, this is feeding in an FFT. This is the one that, in terms of piano entropy, matches the best with actual pop, which is very interesting. That it gets really close, but as we look here, it sees them doing it in a very different way, not in the way that Bach achieved. I actually find that one very interesting musically, but completely unrelated from traditional music. Okay, so then I threw everything at it. I gave it the big master feature vector of 1. And it starts producing things like this. So I think that's several putting here, and there's a few in favor as well. I'm just going to play the bottom one. So we hear configuration of the box that apparently this one here got stuff on the scalar motion, which appears in quite a lot of the box shell pieces, and then it's sort of cycling it around and around. That's like very fashion. So then finally, after getting to this point, did a few explorations of a longer time order, so it's conditional on more previous time steps. Just looking at this one, I'm not going to play it for the sake of time. It starts out with the broken chord pattern, which is the start of the whole suite, and then goes into the scalar passages that I was just playing. Here in a slightly even more repetitive, there's sort of less variety in what it's doing. Eventually, in this example, it transitions out. But this is what you want to see. So the higher orders, once you start eating them these, so there's, again, on the right, that's just Bach, that's the chart. And then these two on the left here are, if you have the order of 7, and then order of 9. It starts to produce clusters, like the Bach distribution does. So some of the examples, it is capable in one model of producing pieces that have a variety of different complexities. 1 minute to get you halfway through this final example that I want to play for you. So this is using all of these, so I get the piano roll, pitch classes, intervals, and a few of 32 notes. It generates this, which I will now play. So we'll get after this, we'll get to questions, and I'm curious to hear what you think of it.
has a nice big buffer of space. So Philippe's just suggested that we can end the session with a more general discussion. So we may do that. But in the meantime, any questions? I'll go.
Okay. So I got the impression that you can tell Shannon to be intuitively as well, right? Because you were saying you tell that one closer to the way that the box is mentioned. So if you could comment a little bit more about kind of the intuition.
Which one in particular?
There was one where you said in this one particular piece is more similar to China piece closer to.
So that's so she asked, is Shannon's entropy intuitively understandable? Well, we think so. So Bach has, so within this one, you can see here, he had, with most of his suite is a very tight distribution. And I don't know, I'm curious to compare other composers, but we would think intuitively that sort of minimalist composers are going to have, they'll be far off the scale from Bach. So Bach is very consistent internally within his music, so some amount of information gets to you within the number, just the number sequence. So I would say, I don't know, but I would say yes, that we hear that in the music. We want some amount of information density. However, we can't, I could play you something no human would ever be able to tell us what it is. The calculation is not that simple. However, from this big table here, I know that one is closest because I know the number on the chart. I calculated it.
So there's nothing to it.
Yeah, no. In fact, we're probably listening to that one. It was the FFT. That one. No, listening to it, I think it's much more complex. I think it's much denser. But there's something about it's very limited range, and I think that we should repeat a lot, and possibly some people but computer tells you.
Yes. So when you say the order is 2 or 6 or 7, does that mean that the note that you produce, like, is that the same as like a 7th order Markov chain? Like you get access to the 7 previous things, and that's all you get to look at.
I think that's a good analogy. Yeah. So it's looking at the previous visible time steps.
And are those passed in sequentially to the network or concatenated together?
I believe they're concatenated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all the examples you played, I don't think any of them really capture a cadential resolution. Is that because the metrics don't really have a way to do that?
Well, that's interesting. Do they have a way to do it? I'm not sure. I'm not informing it. I'm not telling it. I'm not giving it any of my sensibility about what that is. I would suspect within here we could claim that there's a cadence somewhere. There's harmonic. There's 5-1 resolutions within it. So if I chose to interpret it that way, I could force someone as a human performer. Yes, I agree. It doesn't seem to like resting. It always wants to keep on going.
It's great work. Like, it's very interesting. But intuitively, it seems to me not unsurprising that the longer orders create more cohesion. It's very reminiscent, for example, of David Coe's work where recombinatorial chunks are used to mimic these kind of things. Do you have any commentary about that?
No, I agree completely. I was curious to try to push it as far as I could to see. Because we see from the computer vision work, the sort of thing that they can, they look at a little picture and can reconstruct an eye, or you can combine a person with a hat, so that this person has a hat.
So just to follow up, and you mentioned that the vision stuff is now transitions. It might also be that a technique like this, even though it's deep in terms of the order, might be superior potentially to just a recombinatorial approach because of the sequencing between.
Yeah, absolutely. And my next step is twofold. One is we'll get longer orders. And what happens if that's needed 64 minutes or something? Training time. And then the other is stack deeper. So this is just the vanilla version of 2 more layers. But if we go up higher and higher layers, maybe higher layers with still fewer time steps. Okay.
So with systems like this, I guess the noble goal is to get as close as possible to get your model to produce something as close as possible to the original, get it sounding as Bach-y as possible. Which it looks like or it sounds like you're getting pretty close. I'm always thinking about this stuff from a compositional perspective.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, these systems are great, but then when your model gets really good, it's sort of a limited compositional use. I thought you have this. There are 2 examples there. I think the one where you just looked at MIDI notes, and then another one where you're just looking at the FFT.
Yeah.
And those sounded great to me. And I just wonder what you think about this, about using this system or some fragments of the system to make consistent mistakes in the reproduction of Bach for compositional purposes or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first problems that I had with this is I set it up to give it a decent sized order and a decent sized number of units. And then any starting material I would feed it, it would continue exactly what was in Bach. It would find that in the Bach corpus and continue exactly. So it would overfit and reproduce exactly what it had trained on. And that was not at all interesting. So presumably I could reproduce the original complexity distribution just by actually reproducing the same material. But absolutely I did not want to do that. So then I think so I have not looked at the thousands and thousands of examples, haven't looked at them all, but based on these distributions, so that one just the MIDI pitch, that's the top left, and so whatever it's doing it pretty consistent. So whatever sort of mistakes it's making them every time it generates something. With a little bit of variety. It's not a single dot, but you can't see the scale on this. But yeah, I'm a composer, so that is ultimately I want this thing to run and produce interesting stuff.
So, question from Freddie, is Dane here? Yeah, do you want to just get up and get plugged in?
Well, it's a great example of style imitation. We started to use CRB and continuing the work of Taylor for movement generation. So I have a question you already answered about. So right now it's not really deep because you have only 1 layer, right? So if you start tracking them, it's going to improve the model quite a lot, especially for those complex features that have to do with more structural properties. And the question also is in terms of the size of your corpus, it's pretty small for this type of network. And so did you try pre-learning? Because often what you would do is you have a massive corpus, you pre-learn the network, and then you fine-tune with some bar.
The short answer is no.
Yeah. And then the third thing that I would answer another question is an extension of this CRBA model called the factor constraint restricted Boltzmann machine, which allow you to have different corpuses and eventually learn a factor. And you could, for example, learn bar and then learn Mozart, and then you would be able to generate some Mozart bars or whatever that means. And you move between the two. That's more a common thing. And the last thing, which maybe is something, if we have an extra chunk of time at the end of this session that we can talk about, is a lot of the systems, if not all of them this morning, are sort of using a corpus. And then as a community, at some stage, we need to find a way to share and put online corpus so that eventually our system will be comparable. And so there'll be a community discussion where we'll address that tomorrow, but maybe we can start the discussion today to see what is possible and what is not.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you all.
Just check, this is supposed to be 15 minutes. Or is that 25?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this presentation may have a little bit less to do with network.
So unfortunately, I had the ignorance, but
Try taking out the mini jack. It's in. And
Max or something like that.
Then you need to go into your sound preferences and select in audio output the HDMI.
doing pretty well on AV lookups so far.
Say that. Say that.
Can you hear me? I'm not really sure which of these microphones to use. I feel like the former of this one does really work fine. So I'm going to talk about tonal harmony from the perspective of different concepts of structure. So I'd like to start by proposing this dichotomy that's probably familiar to many of you. It comes from contemporary philosophy and continental philosophy, and it's a dichotomy between a structure when there's a strict hierarchy with many things organized in a top-down fashion, and more of a meshwork where things are organized more laterally in more of a bottom-up way. And there's many ways of sort of talking about this. One very popular one, and I hope I don't get too many eye rolls, comes from the work of Joe Lewis, and is in the form of this metaphor of the tree and the rhizome. So we can be kind of picky about this and maybe pick it apart if there are any bottoms in the room. I'm not saying that's a perfect metaphor. But in general, the idea is that we have the tree or the arborescence that has a sort of main root with many branches coming off of it, and there's this strict structure. And then we have a more rhizomatic system where it's more organized in a horizontal fashion with higher connection between the parts and more horizontal organization. So this idea has been kind of misused a lot and has been interpreted as this should say that all hierarchical systems are bad and should be avoided. But actually, Deleuze is pretty explicit in his writings in saying that these systems are always intertwined and there's always a different degree of hierarchy and meshwork organization in any given natural system, and sort of the goal is to seek it out and analyze it using these as not mutually exclusive terms. So one of the most exciting trends in contemporary philosophy for me is this group of post-Deleuzian materialists who have taken this sort of general framework, this sort of abstract concept, and have used it to analyze natural systems. And particularly, there's this one author named Manuel Orlando who's done a lot of great work throughout his career, but specifically in a book called 1,000 Years of Nonlinear History, where he analyzes specifically biological systems, geological systems, and human cultural systems such as economies and languages, and analyzes them in terms of varying degrees of this more higher interconnectedness meshwork system and this more rigid hierarchical tree-like system. So this was very fascinating to me in a sort of a general abstract conceptual framework that applies to many natural systems and sort of brings together in this abstract way many diverse natural systems. So I'm a composer of tonal music, and I wanted to sort of think about how this could be applied to music in a sort of self-conscious, sort of biomimetic way, how can this be represented in music. And of course, there's a long tradition of people representing natural processes and structures in music, especially in the program music of the Romantic period. So this is not sort of a new idea by any means. So I started sort of thinking about it and thinking about where do you see hierarchies in music, and where might they be supplanted with more of a meshwork hierarchy combination, more complex configuration. So I started looking through the literature, actually starting with late Romantic program music, and I actually found, I was sort of surprised to find this exact sort of structure, this complicated interaction between meshworks and hierarchies in the harmony and harmonic language of late Romantic program physics. So let me explain a little bit better. In typical diatonic tonality as practiced in Western harmony, especially through the time practice period, especially after Weber in the beginning of the 1800s, introduced our system of Roman numerals, which we still generally use today as a form of harmonic analysis. The way that we do harmony, especially in conservatories, is very much related to this tree-like model. We have a main hierarchy, which is the key to the scale, and if there's anything deviating from that hierarchy, it needs to be very well explained in terms of a sort of sub-hierarchy that's branching out from some points in there. So I started sort of looking around, and in the late Romantic period, there's these really, there starts to be some weird chords that crop up that aren't really, they can't really be easily explained through this hierarchical framework. But the way that they can be explained is by more direct relationships in between chords, which matches up with this other more mesh-like configuration where things are directly related to each other without reference to an overarching hierarchy. So what would it actually look like for one chord to be directly related to the other? It means that there has to be some sort of functional transformation between the chords. And as practitioners of generative music and computer programmers, this is something we're generally pretty comfortable with, taking in an input and doing something to it and coming up with an output. This sort of functional way of thinking is not too foreign to us. So I started thinking about how this could be applied in generative systems. So, oops, it's not very small. So these are two examples of what it could look like to take a purely chord-to-chord based functional approach to the generation of harmonic sequences without any overarching tonality or hierarchy. So these are explained in great depth in the paper. It sort of took a little bit more technical musical knowledge than I wanted to assume for this room, so I won't spend too much. It's not quite as simple as compute commonalities between two adjacent chords and then pick a random chord that sort of fills those restrictions, but it's not too much more complicated than that. So these are all based on triads. And what I want to call attention to is that it's making this sort of continuous musical language with only transformations between adjacent chords. And also, if you're reading this notation right now, you have to strongly put on your inharmonic relevance because there's no sharps and stuff. So what this first example is a very strict privileging of common tones between. Are you looking the mics? Oh, sorry. It's too loud as well. Privileging common tones. So basically, it selects a common tone that should serve as a pivot between one chord to the next, and fulfilling a few more restrictive requirements makes this sort of sequence. So what I want to call attention to is that it's making this sort of continuous tonal language without any reference to a key or a hierarchy. So this next example is very similar to the last, but it's sort of the opposite. Instead of computing something common, it picks one tone that will move and the other ones will stay stationary. And again, what I sort of want to call attention to here is that there's no overarching hierarchy that's determining the relationships to them. It's just functional transformations from one chord to the next. Yet it's still making this sort of version of tonality over time that's nonetheless not restrained by a marker process or not extend or some sort of system of memory. It's just straight from one chord to the next in this sort of mature function. So one thing that's extremely interesting when you start thinking in terms of connecting one chord to the next is that you wind up with this sort of space of possibilities of how one chord can get to the next chord. And it can literally be imagined and conceived as a geometrical space. And many people have done this, especially Dimitri Tomashko at Princeton has made some extremely interesting geometrical representations of harmonic pitch space and possibilities of one chord to the next. But they get kind of geometrically weird and upset and kind of hard to wrap your head around. So what I've chosen to use as an example is this rather old diagram made by Hugo Riemann at the end of the 18th century. And what you have here is a collection of nodes where each one represents a pitch, of course. And we have major thirds sort of sloping diagonally down to the right and minor thirds down to the left, and a sequence of perfect fifths, or the circle of fifths, that goes horizontally. And what you end up with is a very nice representation of how chords fit together in terms of their similarities and their sort of ability to transform one into the other. So every triangle inherits pitches from its vertices, and flips along the edges of the triangles relate major and minor chords. So this is very sort of conceptually exciting to me in terms of illustrating the types of things that thinking functionally as opposed to hierarchically in neural tonality can sort of open up. And in order to sort of illustrate this more, if you take this particular diagram, this is a 4 by 5 tonets, but it can extend out sort of arbitrarily, and if you extend it up to a 12 by 6 tonets, the top and bottom edge sort of loop around and connect to each other, same thing to other sides, and you get a representation of a 2D surface of a three-dimensional three-dimensional torus. So this sort of demonstrates what it might mean to think in terms of meshworks and harmonies instead of hierarchies. Actually navigating around the space that's sort of defined by the connections between chords as opposed to some hierarchical construction. And that was just with primitive sort of flips along triangle edges, but you can also combine them to make sort of more interesting chord structures. And again, we're just sort of navigating around the space of possibilities in order to construct the tonal progression instead of sort of inheriting from a hierarchy. Okay, so to close, I just want to bring back one sort of idea from Deleuze, who said that it's not just about figuring out where the hierarchies and meshworks are in your system, your harmony. It's about sort of not privileging one over the other, and also knowing that they have sort of a profound relationship. So one of the things that he kind of warns against is sort of leveling all hierarchy in hoping to find this more egalitarian meshwork structure. And he actually proposes a principle which he calls the principle of retemporalization in this very long sort of, he likes weird vocabulary. But what it basically means is that he sees a correlation between the force with which a hierarchy is leveled and the force to which a new hierarchy will come to take its place. So I've been talking about harmony that falls sort of in the realm of late romantic music and early 20th century music. And we all know that there was an amazing move of de-hierarchicalization, I think I just put the word there, with Schoenberg in the 20th century, where he says we're doing away with hierarchies, no more keys, we're just doing chromaticism, every note can relate to every other one. And this seems like sort of a massive liberation of this meshwork system over a hierarchical system. But actually, the way I sort of interpret it is by getting rid of this scalar hierarchy, he's actually just imposed this sort of more rigid restriction that comes along with the techniques of serialism and using the tone row that actually limits the interaction between the tones in a more organic way. So there's been a sort of cutting down of one tree, and the new one is buried sort of with a vengeance in its place. So I hope I've given you some interesting ways to think about harmony, and I hope that you see that this could be applicable in your work in some way. And thanks for your attention.
bringing together of geometry and philosophy.
Thank you.
It seems to me, however, that we still have some issues when we get rid of hierarchy, and that is around directionality. So they kind of, the harmonic things there just move fairly nicely transitionally from one to the next, but they lack any kind of intentional directionality over a longer time span.
Yes, well, two things. One is that, how this sort of vocabulary was used in the Romantic music, which is where I'm sort of pulling these ideas from, was specifically for this, often as an effect of wandering or a lack of intentionality, exactly as you said. So it's been this sort of type of functional harmony has been used, or functional transformations in harmony has been used in sort of two ways. One is in these long passages where all chords are related directly to one another to sort of make this pictorial sort of like dreamscapes or like mountaintops, fairy worlds, a lot of like lists on and off as this sort of these longer sequences. But it's also been used, and this is part of how your question can be starts to be answered as transitional material. Specifically, this is how it was sort of going back to like Chopin and more of the early romantics. It was used to relate larger sections that were in more hierarchical tonal, major minor tonality schemes to relate them together in more interesting ways. So it would be sort of a lack of intentional moment, sort of directional wandering, or a lack of directional wandering between two very directional places, which would sort of provide this comment. But I do agree that it's it does kind of lack, or it can lack a sense of directionality that a hierarchical system would give you. So it's really not about saying that this is the end and the all of aesthetics. It's about saying that it's a way to think about words that can make that can sort of augment traditional approaches.
Yeah, I mean, I think of that, right, that this is a compositional tool that has specific applications, universal, which I think is really powerful. I think if you ran it enough, it would be interesting to see what kind of directionality emerged, which, given, I guess, given sort of the rules that you can talk about here, that it's probably a function of that, which could possibly be composable.
Yeah, and you could also make a more complicated system.
Exactly.
That's what you were looking for. There's no reason why you couldn't design a functional system that builds the requirements on talking about the non-hierarchicality. That has a more memory-based thing. You could do that in a number of ways. So.
I just wanted to ask about the, so I love the chorus, and I didn't see whether that was actually being designed as an interface that someone might interact with that object, or was that just a visual representation?
Do you mean this one? Or
No, the 3D one. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a WebGL app. So it's just in the browser.
It's not letting me turn down the volume, so I'm sorry, it's kind of blaring.
There is actually, there is a way.
Okay. So this can be interacted with in two ways, one of which is by navigating through these buttons right here, which specify specific transformations. So it's kind of spelled out down here, but there's sort of a canonical list of transformations that correspond to different edge flips along the triangles, and that's what these guys do. So you can sort of set up a route that then sort of flashes out here, and then go on your route. There appears to be a bug there. And then the other way it can be interacted with is directly. So you can we're here, or going here. What does it sound like we're going here? You can sort of force just based on the two-dimensional mapping. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so I was curious about the use of 3D interfaces. I was wondering if you were interacting, you could actually interact with that.
Yeah. Right now I can only answer with the 2D. I started working, I'm not sure if it's going to work. There we go. I started trying to work on a way to sort of navigate around the torus directly. But I haven't been working on that part. It sort of turns into a more like video game or like an eye type thing, which is definitely very cool, but it's not sort of going focused right now. It's also surprisingly hard to get a camera to walk around the torus.
All right, so we have a lot of time. But it seems to indicate that here there's a master plan for what we're doing with this time.
And I just realized that the link to the live stream has changed now.
Yeah, so the live stream was reset because we were just trying to get the technology working. I think it's going to get reset again over lunch with a proper microphone.
And my question was, do you know how we find a new link?
Well, my suggestion is just to keep, you go to YouTube, just keep searching for music and inspiration, you should get the latest pieces. Yeah. So that's the advice. We've got to stick with a permanent link, it's going to change. So please do share that, especially after lunch when people might actually hear talks. And beyond.
Yeah, so yeah, we can use a bit of time. So first, the good news is that we're going to be first at lunch. Because that's why the constellations, we have 5 constellations this year, people who were accepted but couldn't travel. And we were debating if we should do remote presentations, but then we thought technically it would be complicated. Maybe we'll organize that in the future. And the idea is, of course, to meet each other in person. But so a lot of the systems this morning were relying on corpus of existing music. Especially symbolic music, and then there's a number of them that are consistently used, but there's no clear guidance or guidelines about which corpus shall be used, and also where to find such a corpus. And so, as a community, it would be nice to have a discussion about whether it's a good idea or not, and if it is a good idea, to decide on a plan of action to try to find a way to gather and put online corpus that can then test a variety of systems on, and eventually start posting also what is generated by what system given a particular corpus that has been landed on. And I know a lot of people have a lot of experience on corpus-based implementation in the room, so I wanted to start that discussion. Does anyone has any idea or guidance or recommendation regarding how to go about doing this? Or even knowledge from other communities.
So Stanford, they have a couple of books, Carmel and one called Hot, including Monday, and they, I think they're really a lot
Oh yeah. So, and that's the webpage.
I can, oh, here. But give me an additional.
Yeah. And that's in a way another thing that we're going to talk about a little bit more tomorrow, but we've been wondering if it was useful is to start a mailing list or a Slack or I mean there's a variety of ways to share information for this community when we're not attending the new workshop. Does anyone knows what would be the best way to do that dimension?
Isner is just, it started the Slack a couple of months ago. It's pretty slow, so
It's pretty good.
it's pretty useful, yeah, especially for practical stuff. And I think we need that kind of sharing a lot. Because in emails, you need to be a little small form like that. You can do conversations and not too many people, but on Slack, you can just like, you don't have to see it. You're just looking for it there. And people are checking on Ismer community, people are checking it regularly actually. You have people are thinking at that point.
There's a Slack at the top left of the live coding community as well, which is quite good.
And what about in Google Group, can you do subgroups? Because this ICCC Computational Creativity Google Group that is already existing. And I don't know if you can easily branch out from a group.
I don't think so, but Slack would be really in that respect, I think. Yeah.
Channels.
Yeah. So you have a lot of control with Slack, how important notifications you get, which channels you subscribe to. It's a great suggestion. There's no being used that way.
So by show of hand, who is familiar with Slack already? That's like a good part of the audience. It's not that complicated. to use, and then by show of hand, who would be volunteering in starting and running as like a new slide?
No, that's just me. You've got too much work. Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I reckon that.
That's the prime. And then that's something we're going to talk about again tomorrow is that Arnie, myself, and Oli have been doing all that work for those 5 workshops, and we feel that we should pass that on soon to other people. And
I mean, given that you're touching on these subjects, maybe the thing we can do is just go through some of those things, and then we'll come back to it tomorrow. And so the end of tomorrow's session, we're going to just finish up with this community discussion kind of thing. And we want lots of ideas. So it might be quite nice if we see that today, so that people can speak on it. And tomorrow we've got some ideas.
that's right.
So that was one of them. Yeah, I mean, basically, the whole question of the general future of the workshop and where we're taking it is open. But one of the things that has transpired through discussions with ICCC is that they're really, Central Conference is really happy that there's a regular new workshop attached to it, and that we don't go off and try and start our own conference or anything, because that would just be unnecessary given that it's such a good fit with the main conference. So our current thinking is that that's the way we would generally go about continuing, because we did start to get excited about the possibility of the conference, but that kind of slightly changed here, and it's so much easier to be organised and set up. Kind of.
But yeah, so yeah, we should. So yeah, it's a very good idea to see that, to think about it for tomorrow. And we'll talk about it again tomorrow to get back to the corpus discussion. And because Izmir was just mentioned, there's also the Mirex. And then one other possibility is to sort of look at the Mirex model and try to see if there's a way to put together a style limitation as Mirex task, basically. The problem is we question with ICCC that it's not very convenient going to the Mirex because that happens through Izmir. So we might just get inspired by them and try to see if we can have that, and have every year in the new workshop a session where we basically have people using their system on one of the few corpora that we put together there. So that's, I'm just thinking alive here now, but what could be done, but that would be nice because there would be not only sharing corpora, corpus that could be used for training and benchmarking systems, but also having a sort of recurring every year way to see how year after year the system is actually getting better at style limitation, and then we could extend to style interpolation or things that are a little bit more creative. And that, in a way, is a little bit linked with what Michael is going to present tomorrow, because I think one of the goals of the Newcomb Turing test for the art is actually to establish and do a sort of benchmark. But I don't think you have style limitation per se as one of the tasks. In fact, the tasks, as you'll see tomorrow, that the Newcomb are proposing are much more advanced than tasks that nobody really has been successfully achieved so far. Where for style limitation, you can arguably say that a number of systems are definitely working without being perfect. So by show of hand again, we think that if there was, that's not hypothetical, if we would spend time to share corpora and put together corpora in a variety of coding, or at least in one coding that would have to be discussed as well, and maybe a variety of encoding because systems don't really work necessarily all with the same encoding, we would be willing to run the system, not necessarily just in the future, but also going back to existing systems and post results of the system using those corpora online to put a framework for doing so together. So who would be willing to share? Yeah, a certain number of people. And who is doing style imitation as a task, as a new task? So that's pretty much the same people as the people that are willing to share, which is good. All right. Any questions, comments on this topic? No. Only anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any questions or comments on what I just said about the workshop and the relationships with the conference. It might be good to just do some more of this kind of just surveying what people are doing. So a couple of questions then, which conferences do other people go to regularly? And so just to get an idea of how our new residents relates. So if I was to say a couple of conferences like ICCC and get a show of hands for how many people so using information with people. That's a small presentation. ICMC.
SMC?
Have ever gone to or?
Well, is it a conference that's, yeah, like let's just say, have you been in the last 5 years to ICCC? Nine? Any others? Seamus. Seamus, okay, yeah. Seamus.
Would you mostly?
So say that again. Yeah, is that you? Anyone? Oh yeah. Okay. ICLC, live coding. Andrew. Did we say SMC? I think we did. Yeah. I think we said SMC. And any other machine learning or any other AI conferences at all that haven't been mentioned?
There is a machine learning music workshop.
Yeah. Is anyone a regular of that? Anyone ever been to that? Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. We'll go to that today.
Sorry, there's other role in the ESMC, we started last year.
Oh, that's the computer modeling simulation. Computer simulation of music. Yeah, so anyone, there's a pub competition. You're not allowed to come to. In fact, yeah. Okay. So maybe we should digest those numbers, and that can be part of the discussion tomorrow as well. What this, getting a better idea of what this community represents and showing.
That's right. And then two other things sort of related is one thing that I would really appreciate. So we've been doing the work, actually, when I say we, it's mostly T-Bench. We've been doing the work of diffusing and trying to promote the workshop and to bring together a mailing list and a list of mailing lists to which we should send announcements. And I would really appreciate if throughout the week, if you know there's a particular mailing list, either as well as a Slack or any forum where you think there would be people interested into generative systems for musical things, and that you read those lists and you find that you didn't see our announcement there, then it'd be really nice to enrich that database of mailing lists that we're using to try to reach as many people as we can, because the more the merrier. And I forgot the other announcement I had to do, but probably not as important as lunch.
So, yeah, like two other things I think, three other things we'll bring up tomorrow for discussion. One is building a and how to go about that and who wants to be involved. We don't have a strict suggestion, but we might generate one from what people say, and then we'll start that process. Another one just off the back of this kind of how the community is distributed is diversity, and I think it's pretty obvious looking around the room that we could do better on that front. So it might just be good to bring up just to start thinking about suggestions for that. And another one is how. So the nice thing about doing this tomorrow is that we're all going to see a concert tonight. And we've been doing these concerts for a little while now, and they're of course a little less standardized than doing a workshop in terms of the academic expectations, how they're managed. And you'll see that we're doing it in a very non-standard venue tonight, which we like to do. We like to keep, and we're quite pleased, I think, this year because we've got genre diversity in the program, whereas we tended to fall into a pattern of doing the live algorithms format of 3D improvisation with assistants. So we're trying to work on that. So that's in a sense another issue of identifying what this community is. So so the point of mentioning concerts was actually to get feedback, but also to see if we can engage more people in being new concert organisers, and particularly when we go to different locations. This is actually the first time we've done this. We've organised a concert with a lot of help from Anna Winding, she's still here. But besides Anna, we weren't on the ground for this, so that was an interesting challenge, but has worked out really nicely. But that's something we'd like to keep going to really build some volume in quantity in doing this. So maybe more than once a year, there'll be a different concept. Anyway, now we really must stop it.
We're going to be late for lunch. One more thing, I just remember of the announcement I want to say, and I'm going to put it as a question just to see how efficient our communication is. Who knows in the room that we just issued a double ACM Computer in Entertainment journal issue on musical metacreation? So definitely the majority of the people do not know that. So we have a problem in terms of reaching out to you guys. So let's, again, think about what media or list you're reading and come to me and give it to me. Yeah, bon appetit everyone.
Great question.
Frankly, I don't see the use from my perspective. I mean, I think
yes, exactly.
Yes, I do.
So wouldn't we also have editing that?
Yeah, we'll do that, but we'll go to the second. Well, I think, yeah, I think we're lucky. We might as well take advantage of it. We could do that. Almost on the stream. How you feel?